Hey guys, tonight we're knee-deep in river mud, and dawn's first whispers, your blistered hands wrestling wet reeds into something resembling order. Picture this. Cobalt twilight clings to the Rhine like a second skin, your knife slicing through stalks that weep cold dew. You probably won't survive the splinters, or the existential dread of realizing no medieval peasant ever stretched their calves properly. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tap where you're watching from and the time. I'll bet 5 bronze coins someone's sipping midnight coffee in Reykjavik right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The riverbank grit creeps under your nails as you work. 14 reeds split before the sun cracks the horizon. Historians love reminding us Roman soldiers patrolled these same shores, their sandals crunching pebbles, now dust in museum cases. Your knife follows the grain, avoiding the pith that'll rot by midsummer. Birds argue in the alders, sparrows, maybe, or those bossy wagtails that always look like they're late for court. The Rhine's chuckle carries secrets, like how 9th century monks supposedly smuggled wine in baskets lined with stolen communion wafers. Your latest creation slumps sideways, a drunken trapezoid that make any self-respecting housewife toss it back. Damp seeps through your knee patch, the one your sister stitched with yellow thread that clashes horribly with your tunic. Morning mist paints everything silver except the blood welling where a reed sliced your thumb. You suck the cut, tasting iron and last night's lentil stew. Experts think basket weavers doubled as river spies during border skirmishes. Those tight coils perfect for hiding scrolls. Your neighbor Gudrun swears she found a Viking arrowhead in her rye field last spring, but she also claims nettle tea cures baldness. The current tugs at unfinished edges, 3 strands come loose, undone by water's persistent fingers. A fish leaps, its belly flashing like a dropped coin. You mimic the motion, threading reeds in the over-under-over rhythm that calms your pulse. The oldest basket ever found here was lined with cherry blossoms, someone's wedding gift, perhaps, or a mother's cradle for stillborn twins. Your blisters throb in time with the mill wheel downstream, its creaks weaving with the rasp of your work. Historians still argue whether these patterns were prayer symbols or just some bored craftsperson's doodles. A barge groans past, its crew shouting bets about how long your pile will hold against the wind. By mid-morning, your fingers move without you, 12 baskets stacked like uncertain promises. The reeds shrink as you work, their tapered ends perfect for threading secrets between ribs. Someone's laundry slaps against rocks upstream, a rhythmic counterpoint to your knife's shush shush shush. Did you know certain basket shapes supposedly attracted eels better than nets? The guilds banned the practice in 1432, called it ungodly geometry. Your hands whisper older truths, the give of willow, the snap of rush, the way mist clings to unfinished rims like breath on a mirror. Sun climbs higher, your shadow pools at your feet, a black puddle with frayed edges, a kingfisher arrows past, blue fire against the green. You'll need to gather more reeds before the heat softens their spines. But for now, the river sings, the baskets breathe, and your blisters bloom into something like belonging. The willow bundles sway like drowsy dancers, their bark still glistening from the river's morning bath. Your knuckle traces a rod's curve, testing its willingness to bend. This isn't your first tango with stubborn wood. Willow plays hard to get, resisting, until you steam it over yesterday's embers. The Rhine exhales nearby, a breath smelling of wet stones and fish scales. Some swear the river's sighs are echoes of Roman merchant ships, those flat-bottomed barges hauling olive oil and soldiers' wine. You've hauled up enough cracked amphory to believe it. Historians still argue whether the whispers are ghost ships or just water wrestling rocks. Both camps would weep if they saw your lunch river eel smoked over willow chips. Blade meets branch, peeling bark in ribbons that curl like ancient scrolls. Your knife's a retired Roman dagger, reborn after centuries buried in river silt. Nice upgrade from the rusted shears your brother borrowed and never returned. The stripped rods glisten pale gold, dried by sunlight and your own impatience. You hum as you work, a melody river traders crooned before Christ's granddaddy was born, or so the ballad sellers claim. Willow bends easier when serenaded, every basketmaker knows that. Well, every basketmaker who's not deaf as a post. A fish leaps, silver arc mirrored in your blade's swing. The rhythm takes over, bend, twist, weave. Your blisters from yesterday's reeds weep into fresh bandages. Should have listened when elders said to rub goose fat on raw skin, but who has time for poultry-based remedies when the willow's singing? 3 rods cross, forming the basket's skeletal grin. Your thumbnail splits a stubborn strand, exposing fibers softer than a banker's hands. No wonder Caesar's troops stuffed their sandals with willow fluff during long marches. You add that to your mental ledger of useless facts that amuse at parties. Clouds drift their shadows, dappling the half-formed basket. 286 weaves completed. Not that you're counting. Okay, you're counting. The river slaps a rock, its wet chuckle pulling your gaze downstream. Something bobs in the current, a shape too square for nature's whims. You wade in, trousers clinging to calves grown sturdy from decades of river wrestling. The prize, a sodden wooden doll, its painted face worn down to a ghost smirk. Probably fell off some lordling's pleasure barge. You prop it on a rock, let the sun dry its splintered dignity. Twilight comes tardy to the party, staining the reed's amber. Your basket's rim rises, a lopsided crown held together by hope and spit. The badger from this morning returns, snout twitching at your eel bones. Credits expired, you murmur, tossing the scraps downstream. It huffs, a sound identical to your sister when you borrowed her good cloak. The first star winks awake as you dip the basket into the shallows. Water seeps through the gaps, 1,000 liquid threads weaving your failures away. Tomorrow's problem. For now, the Rhine hums its old song willow, and water dictating the tempo. You lean back on elbows calloused enough to shame a gladiator. Somewhere downstream, a frog croaks the evening's first note. Your stomach croaks back. Pain fibers throb beneath linen strips your palms, staging their nightly rebellion. That honey and chamomile salve cost 3 eggs at market, worth every yolk when cool relief seeps through bandages. You unwrap the mess, blisters glistening like tiny moons. Ever think of gloves? Jokes the river. You flip it, a gesture fishermen taught you at 12 back, when your hands still looked human. The lullaby starts low in your throat, a tune stitched from generations of tired bones. Great-grandmother's voice hums through your teeth, her ghost clinging to the melody like burrs to wool. They say she wove shrouds during the great flood of 91, back when the Rhine coughed up coffins like bad secrets. Historians still argue whether that deluge drowned 7 villages or 17, as if numbers could measure soup pots lost. Split reeds bite your cracks, their edges sharp as chapel spire shadows. You work by touch now, fingers memorizing the dance of warp and weft. Ever notice how pain etches memories deeper? These calluses map every famine year basket sold, every coin that rolled into a tavern keeper's palm. Willow remembers too, its rings tightening during dry summers you'd rather forget. Moonlight polishes the river, a silver platter holding your reflection. Your no beauty nose bent from that tavern brawl, but your hands fascinate. Travelers swear they saw Saint Matilda's relics with similar knots and grooves. You grin, saints never smeared eel grease on their holy mitts. The workbench creaks, its legs sinking into mud like an old mule refusing to budge. Dawn's first birds heckle your progress. 12 new blisters, 37 splinters pulled by teeth. The basket's belly swells, a pregnant curve demanding 40 more weaves. Hunger gnaws, but those withered apples can wait. You learned young that stopping softens resolve, makes hands forget their purpose. Roman soldiers marched on worse rations, their sandals stuffed with moss and stubbornness. A centurion's jawbone surfaced last spring, molars ground flat from chewing on discipline. Something clinks in your medicine pouch. The cowrie shell necklace, trade for mending a tinker's favorite hat. Its porcelain shine reminds you of ice on winter reeds, beauty that breaks under pressure. You press it to an angry welt, coolness numbing the sting. Not all cures come in jars labeled by monks. Crickets throttle their fiddles as stars dim. Half sleep comes your brow, resting against a willow's ribs. Dreams flicker, child you dipping bleeding palms into the Rhine. Father's voice rougher than today's memory allows. Pain's just the world checking if you're serious. His hands had split leather skin, unkind and glorious. You stir neck stiff as a dowager's morals. The basket mocks from its perch, a lopsided thing whispering, "Finish me." Your knife finds the reed pile edge keen as your grandmother's tongue. Blisters scream. The river hisses. You hum louder, burrowing into the song's marrow. Somewhere downstream, 3 church bells argue about the time. You side with the one that rings twice. Wicker snaps beneath your grip, a sound like winter branches giving way. The fisherman's shadow stretches across your work, all beard and tattered waders. He nods once, an acknowledgement traded between those who bend the river to their will. You don't look up, your fingers braiding reeds, while his silence braids itself into the pattern. Historians still argue whether King Henry's Edict of Nantes reached these banks, or if tolerance dripped upstream like molasses. His net drips perch onto pebbles, a metallic glint among the scales. You recognize the scar across his knuckles, a souvenir from last winter's ice-breaking foolery. He leaves a fish wrapped in nettle leaves payment for last week's loan of twine. Nettle fibers preserve fish better than salt, a trick Rhine wives swear by. The fish stares at you with Roman coin eyes. You swear Parisius himself minted them. Dust stirs downriver, a pilgrim's boots scuffing the towpath. His cloak's hem drags, silt, an amateur move. Seasoned travelers hitch hems with sailors' knots. You count his steps, 19 per pause. Heidelberg scholar, runaway novice. The basket's rim pricks your thumb, a warning to stay curious, but distant. He pauses at your fire pit, its ashes still warm from last night's eel roast. Directions to St. Gore's shrine, he asks. You point north with a half-woven handle. Legends claim the Rhine's glass waves clear sins. You've yet to see a drunkard emerge sober. His boots creak, leather cured with walnut oil by the smell. A trade unfolds without words. He leaves a fist-sized rye loaf, its crust charred black. You toss him a thumb-sized reed basket, perfect for holding prayer beads or poison. The bread's warm weight surprises you, ovens being rare this far east. Some say Roman sentries buried their field kitchens nearby. You found enough brick fragments to believe it. The fisherman guts his catch with a mussel shell, free blade for free fish. You mimic his economy, snapping willow whips into equal lengths. His knife hand trembles not from age, but from that icy plunge last February. You pretend not to notice. Pride's the one fish you never gut. Sun glares off the pilgrim's tin canteen, a flash that could signal armies. You shield your eyes, fingers instinctively tightening the weave. 3 generations back, your uncle spotted Swedish troops that way, sunlight bouncing off breastplates like heliograph warnings. The memory sinks into your basket, another layer in the pattern. By dusk, both strangers vanish. The fisherman retreats to his punt, oars whispering secrets to the current. The pilgrim becomes a speck eaten by horizon, his hat shrinking to a mushroom cap, then nothing. You pocket the rye loaf, untouched. Trust travels slower than news of war here. Night brings different visitors. Bats skim the reeds, their clicks stitching the dark. You unwind soiled bandages, the salve's scent soured by sweat. A cockroach scuttles over your toe, you let it. Even pests deserve a night's work. The Rhine exhales fog, a veil for whatever swims beneath. Some claim catfish big as church doors lurk below, silent, except when dragging ducks under. Stars prick through the haze, your knuckles aching with each prick. Tomorrow's reeds soak in the shallows, softening under an indifferent moon. You trace the pilgrims' boot prints, now blurred by dew. Patterns dissolve, patterns reform. The basket grows, its curves answering the river's own. Your fire dies to embers. Somewhere upstream, a tavern fiddle winds off-key. You hum louder, drowning out the sour notes. The fish lies wrapped, the bread stashed, the stranger's shadows swallowed by the Rhine's endless shrug. Tomorrow brings new travelers, new trades. Tonight, the reeds whisper louder than ghosts. Moonlight spills across the half-woven rim, your latest basket gaping like a hungry infant. The river licks its chops below, all silvered tongue and shifting teeth. You've heard tales of Frankish traders drowning debts in wicker caskets. The baskets floated just long enough for guilt to sink. Your blistered thumb finds the reed's split end, a familiar betrayal. A bat swoops low, its shadow darting between your unfinished work. You mutter the old rhyme against night weaving. Stitch by star, snare your soul, stitch by moon, pay the toll. Nobody admits believing it. Everyone leaves a copper in half-finished baskets come midnight. The coin under your knee warms against damp wool, protection, money for river sprites. Historians still argue whether Rhine barges used wicker anchors, or if that's just drunk poets mistaking baskets for boat parts. Your callus catches a splintered reed, the pains sharp enough to make you grin. Back in Mainz, they'd pay 3 silver pennies for a grain basket this tight. Here, payments in dead fish and suspiciously fragrant mushrooms. The stars above mimic your weave. Orion's belt a sloppy diagonal. Ursa Major's handle askew. You realign a willow strand, take that. Celestial craftsmanship. Moonlight reveals what daylight hides. Roman glass fragments glinting among pebbles, smoothed into false pearls. You've got a jar full of them, each a pillaged piece of some legionnaire's wine flask. Your brother called them tears of mercury. You call them better than nothing. The night shift at St. Hildegard's Abbey burns a lone window, a beacon for insomniac nuns and your wandering thoughts. The Rhineland's night choir crescendos, owls debating voles, foxes insulting hedgehogs, reeds shushing everyone, your fingers slow, not from fatigue, but to savor the braiding ritual. 15 years ago, you'd have rushed to finish before dawn's critique. Now you know moonlight forgives crooked stitches that sunlight would scorch. A fish leaps, its scales briefly hoarding moonlight before vanishing. Your basket's rim droops, left too loose, like a drunkard's smile. You tighten the weave, humming that tavern song about the bishop's missing undergarments. The riverbank clay remembers everything. Charlemagne's march, Napoleon's cannons, That time you vomited sour wine here, a distant splash, probably a beaver, possibly a nixie testing your defenses. You toss a reed toward the sound, peace offering, or provocation, depending on the folklore. Your mother swore water spirits crave human music. Your father insisted they prefer threats. The reed floats untouched. Mysteries remain politely unsolved tonight. By the time the Big Dipper empties its stars into the Rhine's mouth, your basket wears its imperfections like birthmarks. Dawn's first gulls circle, raucous critics eyeing your work. You dunk the half-finished weave into shallows. Let the river critique what moonlight approved. Baskets age better when baptized twice, once in water, once in whispered secrets. Thunderhead shadows bruise the river. Your reed-stained fingers tighten their grip. The first cold gust rings rusty wind chimes from abandoned barges downstream. 3 summers back, you'd seen 5 Napoleonic soldiers drown trying to ford this stretch. Their wicker ammunition baskets bobbed like bloated corks. You not faster, protest against the storm and the ghost of your father's whetstone voice. Rain needles your neck, each drop hissing where it hits sun-warmed skin. The Rhine flips its silty underbelly, water-worn bricks, and shattered clay pipes churn to the surface. A sodden scrap of parchment drifts past, Latin script dissolving into Rorschach blots. Might been a love letter, a tax receipt, a recipe for eel pie. Historians still argue whether Rhine floods cleansed or cursed the valley. You splint a snapped reed with soaked willow bark, emergency surgery for a basket's broken spine. Lightning tattoos the horizon. Your shadow flares colossal against the bank. The air smells of burnt flint and carp breath. You've heard marsh folk claim thunder scares away plague miasmas. Your skeletal-lift knee argues otherwise, its ache pulsing with every volt in the sky. Your mother used to tuck horseshoe nails in the rafters during storms. Iron's a rude guest, she'd say. Makes tempests mind their manners. The nails vanished after her pyre, likely melted into some blacksmith's careless knife. Rain sluices through your hair, water falling off eyebrows as you weave. The basket base warps, a convex curve bowing like a cat's spine mid-hiss. 11 reeds snap in quick succession, betrayed by their own brittle cores. You switch to river grass, soggy but supple, stolen from a kingfisher's nest yesterday. The nest now cradles 3 pebbles in apology. Hailstones scatter across your workspace, miniature cannonballs denting the clay. You flip the unfinished basket helmet style, absurd and effective. 9th century Frankish farmers supposedly armored oxen this way. No scholarly consensus. But you've seen ox skulls dents, matching basket weave patterns. A hailstone ricochets off your makeshift armor, sounding suspiciously like your father's tankard slamming the table. Your ribs remember that clang. The river spits up oddities, a waterlogged doll's arm, a Roman hinge green with verdigris. You jam the metal scrap into muddy bank, instant lightning rod or future archaeologists puzzle. Thunder vibrates your molars as you wrestle slippery reeds. Costermongers in Köln pay double for storm-woven baskets. Superstitious fools think squall-tangled wefts trap luck. You've never admitted how often rain hides your crooked stitches, lightning forks, a jagged crack splitting sky from river. The flashburn afterimage shows your hands moving pale puppets dancing on waterlogged strings. Wicker-making manuals warn against working in storms. Of course, they're written by men who buy their reeds pre-stripped. Electric air clings to your skin, St. Elmo's fire waltzing on basket rims. You saw it once on a fisherman's mast, 3 days before he washed ashore with a lamprey in his lung. The storm's belly rumbles lower now, a hungry dog retreating with stolen scraps. Your basket's rim rebels, kinked like a drunkard's pinky. Rainwater pools in its dips, a microcosm of the Rhine's wrath. You drink from the crescent-shaped puddle, acidic and gritty. Better than that time you sipped mead laced with powdered mummy. Alchemists in Heidelberg still hawk farrow marrow as a virility tonic. You'd rather gargle eel bile. As sudden as it came, the downpour shrivels to drizzle. The Rhine exhales mist, veiling bruises on apple trees upslope. Your hands keep weaving muscle memory, outlasting the storm. The basket emerges battle-scarred, hail-dented, grass-repaired, stinking of wet dog and defiance. You smear river clay across its flaws, camouflage, and consecration. Somewhere downstream, your father's grave silts over his admonitions dissolving like salt in the current. The last knot cinches tight as weak sunlight breaks through. Your storm-born basket sits lopsided, a testament to stubbornness over skill. You lob it spinning into the retreating cloud's reflection. Let the Rhine decide its worth. The river swallows it whole. No compliments, no complaints. Just the wet gasp of water greeting more water. Rainwater sluices between your knuckles, actors rehearsing a play about greed. The reed stem in your left hand threatens mutiny, one wrong flex away from cracking. You twist counterclockwise. Your father's voice growls from muscle memory. Strength's in the spiral, girl. His ghost always forgets you're right-handed. Soggy willow strands stick to your forearms like overcooked noodles. 10th century willow baskets held Carolingian tax coins. Merchants preferred them to leather pouches during spring floods. Yours could barely cradle a sickly kitten. Lightning flickers, revealing split seams you'll blame on hail. A kingfisher dives nearby. Its blue streak ignites your peripheral vision. You mimic the motion, dipping reeds in river slurry to soften them. Mist coats your eyelashes, the Rhine's breath fogging an invisible window. 3 drops hit your nape, cold fingertips tracing vertebrae. Someone's grave probably lacks a roof tonight. Your thumb finds a splinter, blood blooming where callus thinned. Highborn ladies once paid double for baskets lined with leech cloth. Their pinched faces craved rustic elegance. You bet they never clutched a willow switch sprouting thorns. The storm relents, leaving air thick enough to ladle. Reeds surrender to your rhythm, 1 over, 2 under, tension as exact as a lute string. 9th century Frankish illuminated manuscripts show basket weavers wearing badger fur gloves. You've yet to meet a weaver who didn't laugh at that. Hail-mangled edges begin smoothing, forced into compliance by raw persistence. A stray oak leaf drifts into your work, veins mimicking your crosshatch weave. You let it stay botanical collaborator or lazy supervisor. Moss creeps between your toes, nature's passive-aggressive critique of footwear choices. The basket's base firms up, triangular gaps shrinking like shameful secrets. Historians still argue whether medieval tax assessors counted baskets by size or smell. You vote smell. Most peasant goods reeked of desperation and damp sheep. Rainwater pools in the half-finished rim, a moat defending nothing. You blow across the surface, ripples erasing your reflection. Somewhere downstream, this water will baptize a colicky infant or dilute a butcher's runoff. Fluids are democratic that way. Your right pinky cramps, betrayed by hours of crooked tension. You shake it like a malfunctioning bellows. Rhine fishermen swear on eel blood that cramped fingers predict frost. The almanac in your head says August. Liars get nets full of minnows. Twilight seeps through cloud cracks, the first star glinting like a dropped earring. Your basket swells upward, a lopsided tribute to stubbornness. No museum would display it. No merchant would risk selling it, but when you finally set it down, edges seamless, grass-stained palms upturned, it holds the exact weight of the storm. The girl's shadow stretches across your half-dried reeds, 9 years old, if she's a day. She crouches like a heron, stalking minnows, mud-crusted toes curling into the bank. Her cupped hands leak twigs, a swallow's nest stolen mid-construction. You recognize the mossy strands stolen from your own stockpile. Clever thief, Mama says nests cure coughs. She announces, voice cracking under the weight of the lie. 10th century herbalists prescribed swallow's eggshell powder for lung ailments, usually dissolved in stolen communion wine. You snap a reed, its fibers sighing as you twist a ring. Trade. You dangle the green coil, still smelling of river silt. Her nose wrinkles, appraising its worth. Girls like her founded Europe's first apprenticeship riots in 1328. Not that she'd care. The nest drops into your palm, warm from her frantic sprint. 3 eggs gleam speckled like thrush eggs, but tinier. Historians still argue whether medieval folk believed swallows hibernated underwater. The parents' screeches overhead suggest they prefer a different debate. You secure the nest in a willow fork, slightly higher than before. The girl slips the ring onto her thumb, already planning her next heist. She vanishes between birch trunks, leaving you to explain avian real estate ethics to an empty river. Rainwater trickles into your fresh notch, nature's apology for the girl's thievery. You resume weaving, fingers avoiding the nest's silhouette. At least cuckoos Don't ask for receipts. Your brother's laughter rasps like a saw on green wood, all splinters and false starts. He slumps against the willow tin flask, glinting in his left hand. You recognize the amber smear around its rim, 5-penny whiskey from Widow Hess's backroom still. Still murdering reeds. He gestures at your bleeding thumbs with the bottle. 10th century guild records show siblings often shared workshops, though none mention the bloodstains. You tear linen strips from your hem, medieval antiseptic being whatever stings enough to make you hiss. The whiskey bites your cuts, sharp as the morning you both stole father's shears. He snorts when you curse, blunt fingernails digging into his own palms. Identical calluses, identical stubbornness. Historians still argue whether craft skills favored firstborns or the most bullheaded. Firelight gnaws at the dusk, your cookfire pared down to obstinate coals. He feeds it birch bark, the smoke smells like last winter's chilblain ointment. You count 17 empty bottles buried near the oaks, each a rebellion against his betrothal to a miller's daughter. Trade. He nudges the flask toward your basket in progress, willow ribs splayed like a broken bird. You lob a reed at his temple. He chuckles, same pitch as when you both got caned for pilfering communion wine. The linen bandages bloom crimson. Every pull of the reed reopens yesterday's wounds. Your needle dances, thorn-sharpened tip splitting stalks into obedient strands. Doctors once soaked battle dressings in ale, figured the rot couldn't survive a good drunk. His snores merge with the river's mutter by moonrise. You salvage the flask. Last swallow burns away the thorn jabs and the unspoken truth. First, frost whispers through the reeds. Empty glass gleams lighter than a bride price. Morning finds him gone, boot prints trailing toward town. The whiskey's ghost clings to your bandages. You knot the final rim, a basket sturdy enough to hold next year's regrets. Frost feathers the riverbank, each reed wears a glassy skin that shatters at your touch. The first freeze steals your breath mid-stitch, fingers stiff as the rusted hinge on father's old granary. Medieval peasants stored reeds in clay-lined pits. Come winter, too bad your stockpiles reduced to these bone-dry stragglers. You need the fibers. Snap of a broken strand echoes like a tibia, fracturing under siege engines. Historians still argue whether river folk used urine to soften winter reeds. The cow pee stench clinging to your mittens suggests yes. Your fire's down to grudging embers, smoke tangles with fog rolling off the Rhine. Breath ghosts upward, braiding with chimney plumes from the village, half a mile east. You count 11 snaps this hour, each failed read a petty betrayal. That apprentice from Mainz once swore frost improved flexibility. His grave probably cracks just as loud in winter. Teeth sink into a stubborn stalk. The crunch vibrates your jaw. Splinters taste like dead grass and forgotten summers. Your brother's whiskey flasks lie buried under 6 inches of mud now, frozen tombs for lesser rebellions. A wagon creaks past, Its driver hollers something about St. Nicholas' bones warding off chilblains. You hurl a snapped reed at his mare miss by a yard, but the gesture warms you. Dusk bleeds into the reeds, shadows sharpen into blades. Ice thickens along the basket's rim, your thumbnail bleeds where the cold split it. Folk tales claim Charlemagne's soldiers wove armor from winter rushes, which explains why he needed 6 wives. You stab the awl harder, knotting alder bark around the handle. The river groans, a whale song murmur about mill wheels frozen mid-turn upstream. That peddler's midnight visit comes crawling back, his frostbit nose dripped on your last good skein. They're buying up baskets in Koblenz, he'd wheezed, filling 'em with goose fat and nail clippings for plague charms. You traded him a lopsided crate for 3 shriveled turnips. Now the turnips rock in their basket, tiny mummies mocking your empty gut. Stars blink on cold enough to freeze Saxon tears, as the saying goes. You dunk a reed bundle in murky water. The ice resists like a jealous lover. Some fool at the solstice feast swore the Rhine once froze solid. In 859 AD, merchants raced horses from bank to bank. You picture your brother betting his bride's dowry on a one-eyed mare, losing, obviously. Moonlight glazes your latest attempt. A traitorous gap yawns near the base. Crushed walnut shells stain the repair, makes it look intentional, like those Persian carpets with deliberate flaws. Your great aunt's voice hisses in your ear. Only God crafts perfection, child, and he's not wasting it on baskets. The mend holds for now. Church bells hurl their bronze lament across the valley, matins or a death knell. Who can tell? You carve a notch into the willow stump 3 winters since the great flood ate your home. Frost etches patterns on your cloak, pagan spirals. The priests would flay you for replicating. The basket's done ugly as a toad, but its seams bite tight. You set it in the river. Let the current judge what the cold couldn't kill. The peddler arrives at moonrise. His cart jingles with clay pots, oozing violent hues. Real Tyrian purple. He croaks, though everyone knows Constantinople's snail-dye trade collapsed centuries back. His indigo reeks of fermented woad and lies. You keep splitting reeds. The river's gray-green murmur better company than his haggling. He sloshes crimson liquid toward your latest basket, a dye once reserved for emperor's shrouds. Dunk that ugly thing triple its value. Historians still argue whether medieval dyers used pigeon dung as a mordant. Judging by this guy's stench, they definitely did. You flick river mud at his boots. He misreads it as interest. They're bottling sunlight in Mainz. He shows a jar of yolk yellow powder, saffron knockoff, made from lichen and broom flowers. Your great uncle went bankrupt importing that fake gilt. The peddler's grin reveals teeth stained like a smith's forge. You wonder what poisons he's chewed. 3 coins clink onto your stump, a pitiful bid for compromise. Just line the rims. He mimics a noble's affected drawl. Lady Hildegard's steward pays handsomely for tawdry trinkets. You knot a fresh row tight enough to strangle his suggestion. Dawn exposes his dyes, true shades, muddy ochre, piss yellow, a red mimicking dried menstrual rags. He curses when his mule drinks the malachite slurry. River reeds ripple their natural gold, puts his alchemy to shame. The peddler departs at noon, cursing your stubbornness over the rumble of his empty pots. You dip a finger in his abandoned indigo vat. It leaves a stain like a fresh bruise. By dusk, rain washes both pigment and memory downstream. Your baskets breathe easier now, unburdened by counterfeit skins. The kingfisher strikes at dawn, a turquoise dagger, plunging towards silver minnows. Your blade halts mid-stroke, its arc imprinted like fire behind closed eyelids. River spray mists your wrists, cold shock snapping the world into sharp focus. You bend a willow rib, coiling it into the bird's reckless curve. Medieval illuminators crushed kingfisher feathers for blue ink, a hue reserved for saints' robes. Your handle bows outward, too clumsy for sacred manuscripts, just sturdy enough to haul cabbages. A severed reed floats downstream 9 rapid bobs before the current snatches it. Folklore claims kingfishers nest in floating chambers during winter, locked away. Until spring thaws their doors, you've yet to find one, though you've patrolled ice-cracked banks since girlhood. 3 attempts snap in your grip. Damp willow resists avian grace. Your brother once bet ale rations he could weave a flying basket. The splash still haunts his pride, and your left boot. Success comes crooked. The 4th handle arches like a snapped wishbone, awkward but holding. Historians still argue whether spiral patterns in village baskets, encoded messages, or just pleased drunken weavers. You plait in vengeance, a tight helix defying interpretation. Fish scales glitter on the bank, kingfisher leftovers mocking your hunger. A village boy once swore their bluebacks warded off plague. He died coughing crimson roses onto his mother's wicker cradle. Your creation rises, a basket boasting wingspan over practicality. River wind tugs its uneven curves. You have expected to leap into the rapids, claim kinship with that jeweled predator. It doesn't. Rain arrives, needling your scalp as you load the basket with river-smoothed stones. Feathers and reeds share the same fate. They all bend or break. Tomorrow you'll try again. Nettle barbs sink deeper with each twist, your forearms mapped in angry constellations. 47 welts weep clear, 1 for every meal skipped this week. The stems hiss as you split them, green venom glistening like crushed beetles. Sundown's your ally now. Dim light hides the shakes in your grip. Soapwort poultices from Sister Agatha numb the worst stings. Her German convent's 13th century recipe. It reeks of vinegar and surrender. You smear it anyway. Bundles dry overhead, snake-like shadows writhing on the hut's wattle walls. A merchant once traded you indigo for nettleberry dye, claimed Cleopatra, used it to stain her sails. Your fingers stay stubbornly purple for weeks, an accidental royalty. Hunger gnaws louder than the pain. your chattering teeth keeping rhythm. You weave stems starved straight, each lattice a cage for emptiness. Country wives paid in hazelnuts last autumn, now even rodents avoid your door. The sixth basket's rim splinters, rage flashing hot as a smith's forge. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants cursed their tools or just wept into the barley. You opt for spitting into the river. It doesn't hiss back. Moonrise finds you binding splints with reed thread, the ninth attempt since midnight. Nettle cloth made crusaders. Undergarments itch less than wool, a fact your blisters resent. Your thumbs bleed through the wrappings, splotching the weave like rust. Do soothes the rash come dawn, a fleeting truce with the earth. A traveling tinker swore, hanging nettles upside down wards off lightning. You've strung them like morbid bunting. Thunder grumbles approval, or maybe indigestion from last week's storm. By noon, the count's lost meaning. Finished baskets line the shore, crooked soldiers awaiting inspection. Their numbers blur 30, 40. The river's hum fills your skull, a drone smoothing frayed edges. Venom seeps into your brew, nettle tea bitter as unkept vows. A village boy watches eyes wide at your swollen hands. You toss him a basket, watch him flee as if handed a live coal. Twilight stains the reeds violet, your body slack against the willow's spine. Tomorrow, the stings will crust over. Tomorrow, the count might matter again. For now, the rhythm's enough. A stranger's shadow slices through your twilight haze, boot soles crunching cold shale. He crouches charcoal stick, already sketching your hunched shoulders on river-polished stone. The scratch of lead against rock mimics, cicada song, autumn's last gossip. You knot the final reed, a basket small enough to cradle pears. His drawing shows hands larger than life, cracks mapped like delta tributaries. Historians still argue whether medieval vagrants traded art for supper or just stole chickens. You nudge the basket towards him, its ribs still damp with sap. He pauses, smudges moonlight into the stone's grooves with his thumb. 13th century monks used willow charcoal for manuscripts. His sticks smell of sacred bonfires. A rusty chain dangles from his belt, skeletal keys clinking like ill-tuned bells. For the ferryman, you ask, eyeing his pilgrim's badge. He shrugs, tosses the stone into your lap. Your likeness stares back, a creature more root than flesh. The edges blur where he smeared the lines, as if you're dissolving into mist. Rain threatens. You tuck the stone under your tunic. It leaches warmth from your ribs, a glacier's kiss. He's already retreating, your basket swinging from his elbow like a stolen hourglass. Some say wandering sketchers carried plague tokens. You spit 3 times to the west. Dawn reveals the stone's secret, a second figure etched on the reverse. A cloaked woman watches your back, hood embroidered with 8-pointed stars. Your fire-warmed broth trembles, ripples distort her face into something lupin. You bury it beneath the willow, roots gnawing at the stone's edges. For weeks, mud seeps into the lines. Your shadow grows teeth when you pass that spot, jagged and unfamiliar. Harvest moon finds you unearthing it again, the cloaked figure now vanished. Only your charcoal twin remains, smile stretched garish by erosion. Later, you'll swear the basket he took wasn't yours. The knots were wrong, like left-handed stitches. Winter frost splits the stone clean, one half tumbling downstream. You pocket the remnant, its edge sharp enough to cut regrets. It rides your palm for years, smooth as a soldier's spent musket ball. The other half surfaces, decades later gouged into a Rhenish church's foundation. A relic now, tourists rub it for luck. None notice the charcoal ghosts in its grain, your hands still weaving the dark. Rush stems crackle like old bones as you twist them, river mud still clinging to their roots. Your knife sports a new notch 3 days since the pyre smoke cleared. They called it a mercy, that fevered sleep swallowing her last words. Historians love debating whether paupers' coffins held rosemary for remembrance or just masked decay. You layer both, spiky sprigs between reeds that cut your palms. Medieval was often specified burial in water meadow rushes, cheaper than linen shrouds. Your mother's knees would have scoffed at such frippery, she who darned woolen shrouds 3 times over. The riverbank smells wrong now, wet ash, where her stew pot used to simmer. A magpie lands, stealing a silver button from your morning cloak. You let it, knowing the Rhine will claim that trinket by dusk. 17th century grave, robbers reportedly trained crows to spot grave goods. Not that you've got anything left to steal. The coffin's base takes shape, oval like her bread trough. You plate thistledown into the lid, softness she'd deny needing. Threadbare saints watch from stolen altar cloths lining the ribs. Historians still argue whether river burials used stone weights or relied on current whims. You weave lead fishing sinkers into the rushes, each pebble stolen from the miller's sluice. Her hands taught you this stitch, the double helix twist that outlasts flood seasons. Now those hands lie palms up inside, nails split from scrubbing patricians' leavings. She'd mock your sentimentality, voice sharp as the gull circling overhead. Dusk brings an audience, elderly laundresses clucking like damp hens. One tosses valerian sprigs into the coffin, warding off water spirits. You don't mention the fox carcass, bloating upstream. Let them keep their comforts. Nightfall finds you sewing the final seam with nettle twine. The moon peels back cloud layers, revealing coffin shadows stretched lean and hungry. 12 hours you've worked tongue pressed where your milk tooth once wiggled. Some say drowned women surface as Rusalkas, but your mother's too stubborn to die twice. Dawn's first light catches the lead weights. They glow like wolf eyes. You push the coffin into shallows, currents tugging it sideways like a stubborn child. It rights itself midstream, pivoting towards the sea with eerie grace. Rain arrives as the last curve vanishes, washing reed fibers from your bleeding fingers. The laundress's left turnip soup, cold now grease congealing in sheep's bladder bowls. You eat mechanically, tongue tracing the soup's circular swirls. 3 fishermen later claim they saw it, a rush raft bearing a queenly figure west. You spit in their fire, acrid smoke erasing their drunken grins. The miller's boy brings rumors, whispers of a reed, coffins snagged on abbey rocks. You wait for news that never comes. For once grateful, the Rhine keeps secrets better than priests. That buttonless cloak hangs heavier now, its threads straining to hold all she never said. Sleep comes in stolen patches, dreams of rushes growing through ribcages. You wake clutching a half-woven basket, pattern mirroring her coffin's tight spiral. The river licks its lips, sated for now. Your knuckles whiten around the raft's willow bindings, the Rhine's current now pouring upstream like a starved beast. Eels writhe in moonlit shallows, their bodies knotting into living sigils. You taste iron on the wind, or is it blood from your bitten tongue? 14th century tug-of-war festivals once spanned this stretch, teams hauling ropes until the river changed sides. Tonight needs no peasants' games. The raft groans, childhood Oaks Creek, where you anchored them. Their roots remember you. 12 summers carving initials, 13 winters snapping brittle branches for kindling. Historians still argue whether medieval Rhine floods were divine omens or just lunar madness. You spit into the churn, your offering sinks, unredeemed. Clouds scuttle like panicked sheep, moonlight silvers the reeds into soldier pikes. Your knife jabs at the remaining ropes, frayed hemp hisses through your blistered palms. Roman engineers supposedly tossed vinegar on stubborn stones, yours sizzle faintly, betraying the river's rebellion. A fish smacks the raft's underside, scales gleaming like an assassin's blade. Eastward now, currents clawing toward alpine cradles instead of sea graves. Your mother's coffin might be writhing upstream too, spiked rushes scratching at drowned cathedral doors. You laugh a cracked sound as water sloshes into your boots. 18 dead swans float past, necks snapped in identical spirals. Villagers' bonfires speckle the cliffs, their flames. Fleas compared to this liquid fury, some fools ringing the flood bell, its bronze tongue heedless of the hour. You recall that nun's tale, how Charlemagne's ghost patrols reversed flows with a rusty halberd. The silt between your toes holds Frank's arrowheads, their battles long outsourced to worms. Mudslides birth new islands midriver, their banks pregnant with uprooted hazel shrubs. You snatch a drifting wine cask, its German staves still reeking of Riesling excess. 14th century tavern ledgers show Rhine wines outsold Moselle during wet summers. Not that this plundered vintage impresses. The first sip curdles your throat, vinegar masquerading as salvation. Dawn bleeds through, pink-tinged waves revealing submerged fence posts. The raft lodges against a half-drowned barn, its thatch crawling with displaced rats. You free a perch from their nest, teeth meeting scales where claws failed. Historians love debating if reversed flows sank Viking longships. But today's casualties are simpler things. A child's straw doll a smith's waterlogged bellows. By noon, the current slackens, spent as a drunkard post-brawl. Your childhood oaks still hold bark, stripped where ropes nod. A badger paddles past, clenched jaws around someone's stolen carp. You consider offering it your last turnip until the fish's dead eye blinks. When the Rhine finally sighs back westward, its retreat littered with groan. Jing debris, you count losses. 3 eels suffocate in your reed trap. Your brothers rusted all lies abandoned on the raft. The taste of upstream still coats your teeth stale and oddly sweet. Villagers will blame mercury miners or papal curses, never the river's own fickle heart. You carve a new notch in the raft's edge, rough tally of survived upheavals. That nun's ghost story nags your thoughts, Charlemagne's spectre, preferring moonless nights for patrols. Tonight's task: reweave the hemp knots while whispering scent Gore's name 3 times, no fewer. Let the eels scribble their mud memoirs. Let the Rhine forget. Anchoring the raft feels different this time, knots doubled, stakes deeper. You leave the badger's half-eaten carp, speared on an oak branch tiny piece, offering to whatever capricious god's watching. The river gurgles something that almost sounds like laughter or indigestion. You choose to believe it's the former. The Rhine's laughter fades. Your peace offering of carp sways like a grim wind chime. Morning sluices silt through your boots, each step squelching with secrets. You spot yellowed curves in the shallows, goat teeth grinning through murky baptism. Barbed wire snags your ankle, rusted French military surplus from the last war. Historians love noting how 1923 occupation troops strung it along docks. Forgotten coils now necklace the riverbed. The jawbone resists, rooted in muck, like a stubborn molar. Your knife pries it free, dull blade kissing, enamel older than your grandparents'. Something winks beneath, a Roman coin fused to the mandible by time's grip. Rhine fishermen still whisper about votive offerings, animal bones weighted with imperial luck. You pocket it, the dead goat's grin now your burden. Rain patters, not the sky's work, but a passing barge's bilge pump. The coin's profile wears away, Caesar's nose sanded to a nub. You mimic his stern expression, chin jutting, lips pressed, until a minnow nips your toe. Laughter bubbles up, strange counterpoint to the barbed wire's crimson kiss on your shin. Carving begins at twilight. Flint strike over kindling. Jawbone ridges catch firelight, each groove a mountain range in miniature. Your blade worries at the joint, splitting cartilage preserved like amber. Scholars still bicker whether Roman River offerings honored Neptune or local nymphs. You honor neither, shaving bone into a hook sharp enough to gut fate. Fingers cramp the old injury from frostbitten reeds flares. Finished, the hook glints, a crescent moon stolen from night's arsenal. Testing it on willow bark, it peels strips clean as a butcher's cut. The coin warms in your palm, profile finally legible. Not Caesar, but Agrippina scowling. Midnight ticks by in frog croaks, water striders sketch maps on black glass. You thread the hook with stolen fishing line, links gut left by trappers. Historians argue if Agrippina's Rhine fleet sank here, or just rotted in some forgotten cove. Your first cast snags the barbed wire, ironic applause from the river's depths. A tug, violent, insistent. You reel in a sodden scholar's hat, velvet rot chewed by lampreys. Its moth-eaten brim droops, centuries of academic failures dripping back into the Rhine. The hook survives barely. Agrippina's face seems amused now, or maybe that's the carp's ghost laughing. Dawn finds you gutting a perch, hook glinting in its throat like misplaced jewelry. You eat it raw, scales sticking to your lips. The coin buys nothing here, Agrippina's glare softened by fish blood. Barbed wire rusts in your satchel, next harvests spiteful stitching. By noon, the hook's virgin voyage ends, snapping on a waterlogged trunk. You bury the fragments under river stones, tiny cairns for miniature martyrs. The goat's jaw returns as shards, what the Rhine claims, it keeps. Villagers will ask about your limp tomorrow, the barbed wire's kiss turned septic. You'll spin tales of Roman specters, Agrippina demanding tribute in flesh. For now, the current hums, a wet lullaby for broken hooks and forgotten wars. Coins sink, bones whisper. You carve again. The fire takes faster than thieves. Failed baskets curl like sinners in purgatory. Split seams hiss confessions, over-tightened rims, snapped handles, the arrogance of green reeds. You feed them to the flames, each sacrifice a lesson you refuse to learn. Ash moths waltz upwards, translucent wings powdered with the remains of your hubris. One clings to your sleeve, its papery legs mapping your pulse. Villagers once swore these ember-born insects carried dead weavers' curses. You blow gently, watch it spiral back toward smoke thick enough to chew. It tastes like 1845. The year potato blight crept upriver in merchant ships. 3 generations later, soil still shivers under flax crops. A knot pops sparks mimic fireflies you caught as a child in glass jars. The pyre's heat warms your knees, mirroring the fever that took your sister's voice. She'd have laughed at this spectacle, murmured better kindling than baskets through cracked lips. You snap a warped stave, splinters lodge under your thumbnail like tiny headstones. Dawn's first barges sound their horns, mournful drones harmonizing with collapsing basketry. Historians still argue whether Rhine weavers burned failures as ritual or simple practicality. You do both, tossing in a Roman hook shard for flair. The goat's jawbone survives, watching from the mud, charred but unbroken. Smoke stings your eyes, tears carving salt trails through soot. A moth lands in your hair crown of ashes for the basket queen. You imagine scholars centuries hence, puzzling over this blackened midden. Let them debate your ritualistic destruction, never guessing you simply ran out of storage space. The last ember dies, an orange pupil shrinking into gray. Your palms read the heat like braille, blisters translating to tomorrow's blisters. Somewhere downstream, a fish leaps, silver body arcing through phoenix-scented air. You pocket a charred reed, souvenir of disasters survived. The Rhine licks its wounds, choking on your ambition, one cinder at a time. The stranger's shadow falls across your work long before his boots crunch the gravel. Sunlight glints off a brass spyglass at his belt, its lens cracked like a dragonfly's eye. He kneels without asking, hands unrolling birch bark etched with valleys and jagged peaks. Via Claudia Augusta, he rasps, fingernail tracing an inked line, snaking through mountains. You recognize the name. Roman engineers laid those roads centuries ago. Stubborn stone veins, pulsing through Germania's flesh. His map smells of campfire resin and something animal fat tangy. Historians still argue whether legionnaires used badger grease to waterproof their scrolls or just liked the stink. You press a thumb into sapphire blue, lakes drawn with woad dye, the pigment staining your skin like phantom bruises. Alpine passes. The man mutters, his Latin accent souring the vowels. Bad for marching, good for dreaming. Your reed knife catches the sun, blade hovering between threat and tool. He laughs, a sound like dry reeds rattling. Trade. 2 pewter tokens clink onto the bank. Constantinople's crossed keys stamped crude on their faces. You shake your head, point to the half-finished cradle at your feet. His eyebrows lift, crevices deepening in sun-cracked skin. The bargaining lasts 3 cicada songs. He leaves the map, takes a basket sized for apples or a human skull. As his silhouette shrinks northward, you flatten the birch against a stone. Foreign contours bleed through the bark, mountain ridges echoing the Rhine's whims. Your needle flies now, stitching the cradle's base with borrowed geography. Each knot mirrors a pass where Hannibal's elephants once stumbled, though you'll never say their name aloud. Dusk paints the river copper. You work until the map's edges fray, until your thread outlines a land you'll never walk. Somewhere south, real Alps scrape the sky, glaciers grinding time into silt. Your cradle grows curves, fit for unknown rivers, swaddling valleys, where no child of yours will cry. The stranger's coins glint in fading light. Constantinople's lies worn smooth by desperate thumbs. A fish jumps, ripples distorting inked mountain peaks. You hum the lullaby your mother sang, each note bending to fit this alien terrain. When the final knot cinches tight, the cradle rocks empty, an ark for ghosts. Across the Rhine, an owl calls, its voice mapping territories older than roads, older than badger grease, older than human hands that dare rewrite the world with reeds and hubris. Your needle stabs air where the stranger's map once lay river mud, has swallowed its alpine valleys whole. Fishermen's torches bob across the water tonight, their voices carry tales of spires that sing beneath the current. You press a palm to your ribs. Each breath feels the weight of water that isn't there. 3 bells. Old Gunter insists downstream, his net tangling with half a story. Heard him myself, low C, F sharp, and something ungodly. His companion spits. Saints don't drown so easy. Historians still argue whether flooded villages birthed these legends, or if the Rhine just hungers for new choir boys. You thread copper wire through rushes, and old wives trick to mute underwater chimes. The basket between your knees isn't like the others. Its weave spirals inward, a labyrinth in miniature. Every seventh stitch, you twist southward, mimicking 7th Legion coins found in river silt. Funny how soldiers vanished here centuries ago, their armor now crab condos. Your lungs hitch phantom, cold floods your chest cavity. Could be rheumatism. Could be Saint Gore himself gripping your heartstrings from his watery pew. Midnight ripples distort the torchlight. Your 7 rows deep when the wire snaps, coil springing free like an unleashed eel. Across the bank, Gunter howls about bloody angel hair in his nets. Scholars swear medieval monks dumped relic forgeries, here tin halos and leaden saint bones. You fumble for the wire, it slices your thumb, a red bead swelling like communion wine. The basket drinks it eagerly. By dawn, your creation bulges with secrets, each whorl containing 7 knots dipped in rumor. Salt traders once claimed river dragons coiled around submerged steeples, their pearly scales forged from melted sacramental cups. You know better. Those scales are just Roman dishware shards, glazed blue and eternally homesick. Rain falls, needles stitching river to sky. Your hands cramp around the basket's warped rim. If songs rise from the deep tonight, they'll meet a cage of copper and spite. Let historians dive for their precious truths. You've woven a different kind of scripture. The Rhine licks your ankles, indifferent. Somewhere below, 3 bells shiver, and 7 saints roll their waterlogged eyes. Feathers slice the air like shears. A magpie's lute jingles in its beak. Your pewter clasp winks farewell from between iridescent tail feathers. Thieving bastard, you mutter, but grin when 3 more swoop down. Secrets in their DNA since Charlemagne's reign. Folks nailed dead magpies to barns to curb their kleptomania. You prefer willow diplomacy. 12 bead eyes stare from your palm. Glass imports Venetian traders swore held saintly tears. Historians still argue whether medieval apothecaries actually prescribed jeweled talismans for theft, or just enjoyed upcharging gullible nobles. You knot them onto willow switches with nettle twine. Each swing releases a lazy clack-clack, wind-up toys scolding the sky. A juvenile dive bombs your hair, it escapes with a birch curl, your scalp stinging approval. Your grandmother warned about birds stealing loose thoughts, claimed she'd found her lost wedding vow in a wren's nest. Downriver, a merchant's wife shrieks as silver thimbles vanish from her drying cloak. You lob a bead-strung branch her way. It arches like a comet, all wrong. Magpies reclaim their projectile within seconds. By midday, your apron pockets hang lighter buttons, fishhooks, even a pilgrim's tin medallion sacrificed to corvid greed. Laughter bubbles up when a particularly bold thief absconds with your left shoe. Barefoot on the bank, you note how magpies mimic human coughs, a trick Roman soldiers mistook for omens. The Rhine chuckles through reeds, exposed by summer's thirst. Twilight brings reinforcements, 20 black and white bandits casing your camp. You string the last beads into a mock crown, willow supple as a conspirator's spine. When the first thief lunges for its fake gems, the whole structure collapses, trapping the bird in a tangle of clattering glass. It squawks, what might be an old High German curse. You open the cage at dawn. The magpie departs slower than its kin, one bead clutched tight. Its pals mob it mid-flight, desperate to steal the treasure. They vanish downstream in a screaming cloud. On your work mat rests payment, a tarnished Napoleonic coin, and a thimble sized for a doll. Rumor says Rhine magpies hoard Saxon dentures and Luftwaffe screws. You pocket the coin, let archaeologists fret over provenance. The beadless branches sway empty, but your shoes returned overnight. Laces chewed, but considerate, her shadow stretches across mint-green shallows, a bride's silhouette warped by ripples. You recognize the pose, shoulders curled forward, right hand clenched over absent digit. Silver's gleam still haunts the riverbed where her ring sank. 17th century brides wore reed bands when metal grew scarce, a fact you don't share as she sniffles. Damp silk whispers against your elbow. She's trailed you upstream. Make another, she asks. Not a question. Her palm bleeds where the ring ripped loose during laundry. You snap a river cane stalk. Its pith tastes like bitter almonds. 3 twists, left over right, a pattern Saxon midwives used for umbilical cords. Historians still argue whether these birthing bracelets actually warded off infant fevers or just gave hands something to do. She flinches when cold reed touches her welted finger. It'll break before dusk, she accuses. True, you knot marsh marigolds into the weave, their sappy hearts staining the fibers gold. They last longer if you talk to them, you lie. She eyes you sideways, her face a ledger of dowry debts and impatient grooms. 4 teenage girls materialize downstream, giggles evaporating when they spot the makeshift ring. One shouts, "Bring back the Ironman of the Rhine." They scamper off. You explain the local legend. Divers still hunt for a medieval knight's armor supposedly snagged near this bend. The bride cradles her reed band. Idiots, she mutters. Water eats armor, eats everything. Evening unspools its shadows. She refuses to leave until her floral dye sets. You recount how Hessian wives tossed cumin seeds into the Rhine, believing conception impossible, until the river sprouted green. She snorts. Bet the fishermen ate better that year. Her joke rashes the air, a raw thing. Footsteps crumble the bank behind you. Her husband's boots kick pebbles into the current. There you are, he says. Not a greeting. She hides the reed hand behind her back, bruised finger curled protectively. Silver rules his world, coin clips jangling at his belt. The absent rings wait. You gift them a basket for supper river snails and wild garlic. He eyes its lopsided form, could sell straighter ones in Koblenz. She eats 3 snails, sucking each shell silent. They leave at moonrise, her reed ring already fraying. You wait, knee-deep in the river's icy grip. Historians still argue whether peasant brides preferred these ephemeral bands, or if folklore airbrushed desperation into romance. A splash disrupts your thoughts. The reed circlet floats downstream, marigolds glowing like miniature suns. You let it go. Water's softer than metal, kinder to what's temporary. Dawn paints the river with greasy rainbows, oil slicks shimmering where trading ships once anchored. Rotting planks jut from the shallows like broken teeth, a shattered cog's ribs still wearing its Lübeck merchant seal. You count 17 days since the last mast pierced the horizon, a record since the Hanseatic League choked on its own tariffs. Your knife rasps through river cane, blade nicking skin in rhythm with the silence. No creaking hulls, no drunken traders howling folk songs, just carp slurping algae off abandoned hulls. 14th century grain barges often sank from overloading, though none confessed it mid-farewell kiss to the riverbank. A child's leather shoe floats past, sole gaping like a hungry mouth. You spear it with a willow rod. 2 copper nails wink from the heel. Cobblers near Strasbourg hammered nails outward during plague years, a futile jab at germ theory centuries early. The woods pitted with rat bites, tiny mandible grooves preserved in tannin. Your latest basket bulges asymmetrical edges, twisting into claw-like protrusions. Merchant-approved patterns rot in your memory, replaced by spirals that mimic water beetles, whirligig dances. A kingfisher eyes your work, head cocked before plunging after minnows. Not selling, you tell it. The bird ignores you, wings snapping like wet sails. Sunset reveals shapes in the silt, rusty anchors, cracked demijohns, a moldering dollop of nutmeg bigger than your fist. Historians still argue whether the Rhine's sudden emptiness stemmed from economic collapse or the Black Death's second encore. You suspect both greed and germs being longtime bedfellows. 3 fishermen haul nets full of river grime, and 1 startled eel. No more tolls to pay. 1 jokes, knife sawing through a rotted mooring rope. The fibers part reluctantly, stinking of swamp gas and dead mollusks. Their laughter echoes falsely, like priests gargling vinegar. Night brings distant fires' minds. Cologne, painting the sky jaundiced. You unravel a half-finished basket, reeds hissing like spurned lovers. New patterns emerge, knots recalling Celtic torques, edges serrated like Frankish arrowheads. A drunkard once claimed Rhine mud preserved Roman legionnaires. Dreams, you stuff the notion into your weaving. Morning exposes more flotsam, a waterlogged lute, its strings breeding algae. You pluck a warped note, the instrument belches river water. Music scholars would weep, but it pairs well with the croak of carrion crows. By noon, Your fingers sculpt a basket wide enough to cradle a mastiff or drown a man. The design defies all reason, a honeycomb fused with a drag net. You line it with thistledown contraband softness. When merchants ruled the river, this'd earn a whip's kiss. Now it earns a heron's approving stare. Rain arrives, fattening droplets that pockmark silt into lunar landscapes. You shelter under an overturned wine barrel, its staves branded with a vintner's faded phallus logo. The river's teaching you new dialects, each gurgle translating as freedom or ruin, depending on the hour. Hunger gnaws. You're reduced to gnawing lichen off ship ribs. 9th century monks seasoned the stuff with urine, a fact best forgotten as your teeth grind grit. The last edible snail fled weeks ago, prudish refugee from your larder. Your latest creation sits skewbald in the drizzle, one side willow straight-laced, the other bulging with mutant bulrushes. It whispers when the wind punches its holes, a tuneless aria even eels avoid. Trade routes might decay, but the river keeps composing new rules in wet ink. Moonrise catches you ankle deep, currents tattooing unseen maps on your skin. Somewhere downstream, your derelict baskets float, or maybe sink, testaments to commerce's corpse and wildness reborn. The Rhine licks your blisters, apprentice to your unraveled craft. Fever licks your spine, a wolf gnawing marrow from the vertebrae. Sun-struck reeds warp into scaled coils, wet hisses rising where the Rhine should babble. You plunge hands into the water, fingers meeting not silt, but cartilage. The riverbeds become a ribcage. 3 days without sleep, 5 without bread. The basket between your knees writhes, its rim sprouting lidless eyes. Historians note 15th century fever victims often mistook hemp rope for adders, but your reeds grow teeth. You weave faster, ignoring how the strands squirm like skinned eels. Someone's hammering a drum inside your skull, or maybe that's just cathedral bells sunk in the Rhine. Legends claim river sirens drowned Mainz's Carillon in 1327, their song liquefying bronze. Your fingernails pry up a reed. It bleeds sap thicker than tavern mustard. A shadow looms, twin crescents gleaming where eyes should be. Pyrites, you slur, recognizing the fool's gold stitched into a scavenger's cloak. But the figure drips algae onto your forehead, its breath reeking of drowned plowmen. You lash out with a half-woven base. The reeds cinch around its throat. Morning finds you ankle-deep in broken bulrushes. The basket's rim sports fresh cracks, jagged as a wolfhound's snarl. Your arms sting, crisscrossed, with scratches too straight for brambles. A shard of Roman glass winks from the mud, its edge crusted in something rust-brown. 9th century leeches farmed along these banks supposedly cured lunacy, though you'd settle for a potato. Chills come next, teeth clattering like dice in a Flemish gambler's cup. You swaddle yourself in failed baskets, their gaps, whistling a discordant hymn. The Rhine's voice deepens, words bubbling up from the murk. Trade winds rot. Masts grow fungi, weavers drown in their own knots. Delirium reshapes the shoreline. Bulrushes sprout thumbnail mirrors, reflecting faces, not your own. A one-eyed crone sipping broth from a fox skull, a charcoal-burned soldier trying to stitch his lips shut. You flicker between them, needle-gashed thumbs stitching air. When the crows descend, they speak in High German, pecking orders and tax assessments. Unsanctioned weaving clucks the largest, a magistrate's ribbon circling its leg. You hurl a mud clod, it explodes into woodless and pewter shillings. Nightfall blurs reality. Your latest basket devours its predecessor. Rattan jaws grinding fiber into mash. Historians still argue whether the dance of death murals spurred plague-era fatalism or mirrored it. You're too busy battling your loom, its warped struts now fused with vertebrae. Dawn's gray fingers expose your trophy, a half-formed cradle warped into a serpent's gullet. Reeds spiral inward, razor-edged teeth frozen mid-snap. No trace of the nightmare peddler, just trampled mud and a snapped wax seal. Rhine toll documents from 1384 often bore purple wax. This one's stamped with a cross-eyed rooster. Sun bleaches your fever, leaving joints stewed in brine. You snap the basket's spine. It releases a sigh of swamp gas and juniper. A muskrat drags the carcass into the water, final rites performed by vermin. The river resumes its lies, lapping innocently at your toes. But you've seen its ribs, smelled its breath. Your next weave starts with triple knots, each coil barbed with distrust. The crow arrives at high noon, its shadow pooling like spilled ink across your basket. You're tearing stale bread, your last crust, when a black beak darts in, the theft's surgical a blink, and your lunch is gone. Only an acrid aftertaste of Roman lead remains. It perches on a willow branch, head cocked to showcase its missing eye. The socket's a crater lined with scar tissue, too clean for an animal's brawl. In its beak glints something circular, a coin. The bird drops its loot, bronze clinking against river stone, and croaks what might be Latin. You pocket the coin without examining it, less payment than taunt. Valentinian, I ordered forts built along this stretch against barbarians. His engineers left more coins in the mud than walls. The crow watches, a feathered quartermaster auditing your indifference. Rubbing the coin's edges, you feel the profile emerge, a nose eroded to a nub. Historians still argue whether 3rd century legionaries dropped these as offerings, or just couldn't swim in full armor. The crow fluffs its feathers, preening under scrutiny. Next time you mutter, bring salt. River barges once paid their tolls in Celtic rock salt, pink as a healed burn. The bird caws a sound like cracking walnut shells and drops a second coin. This one's edge bears teeth marks, some long-dead soul testing its worth. Your weaving resumes, reeds hissing through blistered fingers. The crow shuffles closer, its talons scratching a rhythm, matching your strokes. You recall Ravenna's tax ledgers mentioning trained corvids delivering fines. But this feels personal. Its good eye reflects your hunched form, tiny basketmaker warped into a hunched ghoul. 3 hours pass. The sun bleaches the Rhine to tinplate. You fashioned a coin-sized reed capsule, nestling the bronze inside. The crow squawks approval, a noise swallowed by the river's gossip. When you toss the capsule skyward, the bird snatches it midair, wing beats churning up the stench of wet nettles. Some say crows bury Roman metal to hex invading spirits. Others claim they're just magpies with better publicists. Either way, your hunger remains. Twilight paints the bird obsidian, its silhouette fraying into dusk. The river spits up another coin overnight green with patina. You leave it untouched, a snub to whatever game the Rhine's playing. By dawn, it's vanished, replaced by a fish head grinning with human teeth. You kneel by the elderberry bush, mud seeping through threadbare knees. The fish head's grin mocks from last night's offering. Rusted blades whisper in your palm, a decade's worth of snapped reeds. Historians still argue whether Roman smiths blessed tools or cursed the metal's temper. You opt for a burial, no incense, just riverbank pragmatism. Dug earth smells like old nails and denial. Each snip wound on your thumb throbs a counterpoint. 18th century dyers used elderberry ash to mute wolves. Stink your whole reeks of pounded metal. The shears kiss the dirt, crusted jaws pried open in surrender. Rest well. You lie knowing rust never sleeps. A woodpecker hammers Morse code overhead, critiquing your grave's depth. You pat the soil, half expecting the blades to burst forth like undead sturgeon. Medieval midden heaps hid under elderberries, rot masquerading as sweet blossoms. Your hands itch to dig them up already. No time, the willow won't wait for sentiment. You clamp a reed between molars, savoring the green snap. Teeth split fibers better than any blade if you ignore the grit. Your jaw creaks, a hinge on a haunted strongbox. The river slaps the bank. Applause or derision, take your pick. Calluses snag on strands, your fingerprints filing complaints. 16th century guilds banned basketmakers from trimming their beards, said the hairs interfered with weave tension. You spit out a splinter, defiant follicle-free. Twilight arrives wearing a cologne of wet dog and peat. Your latest basket bulges lopsided, rebel reeds jutting at odd angles. It's not pretty, but pretty never carried turnips through a hailstorm. The Grimm brothers' 43rd tale claims baskets weave themselves at midnight if you plant shears under an elder at dusk. You glance at the disturbed soil, quiet as a trader's pulse. Stars emerge, pinpricks, in a moldy quilt. Sleep tugs your eyelids down, threaded with the promise of blisters yet to come. Sunlight fractures against brass, flashes, arrow straight from the pine-ridged hills. Your thumbnail finds the groove in the basket's base, prying up the false willow lattice. Stolen barley cascades into your lap, each grain a treasonous bead. Napoleon's quartermasters once demanded 30 tons of Rhine wheat weekly, their scales always tipping toward greed. You tuck the contraband deeper, nestling sacks where handles will hide their bulge. A lieutenant's frogged coat glitters, no mistaking that peacock strut. They've come for the miller's hidden silo, but you're just a harmless reed plater. Right, your fingers braid faster, the rhythm shouting innocence through every overhand twist. Someone taught Prussian scouts to read smoke signals in laundry lines. Idiots never studied basket seams. You there, the accent cracks like whipstock, all Berlin bark and no bite. Sergeant's orders, inspect your wares. Provide breathless compliance. Let them poke through the decoy pile. 14 years back, Bavarian troops missed a pistol stashed in a bread basket. Their commander ate the evidence. Your thumbs trace the hidden compartment's edge, splinters, welcoming familiar skin. The soldier stabs his bayonet through a harvest crate straw, exhales its golden sigh. Next, you offer the flawless market basket, its underbelly swelling with rebellion. He flips it, taps the base, squints at the river's reflection, dancing across tight weave. Historians still argue whether Habsburg agents used coded basket patterns or just hallucinated from too much schnapps. His gauntlet brushes the false panel, fingers linger. The Rhine holds its breath. Loose thread here, grandfather. He yanks a stray reed, the whole structure groans, but holds. Your pulse thrums in blistered fingertips. They're trained to hear lies, not count stitches. Move along, he grunts, already eyeing the fishmonger's cart. You exhale through a nose, clogged with reed dust. Victory smells like mildew and adolescent arrogance. The 1812 Mainz tax rolls list 3 basketmakers executed for smuggling their inventories, suspiciously light on willow. Your hands reconstruct the compartment, knots pulled tighter than a conscript's drumhead. Twilight bleeds across the hills. Campfires bloom like poppies. They'll return at dawn hungrier. You count the remaining grain sacks, enough to barter 3 village winters. False bottoms require sacrificial layers, a lattice of ruined reeds masking the treasure beneath. Tricky business, like that Strasbourg baker who hid a deserter in a risen loaf. The river slurps at your heels, complicit. You etch tomorrow's hiding spots into damp clay, a map only rain can decode. Somewhere downstream, a soldier's stew thickens with your barley, his spoon clinking against a bowl stamped Bavarian military issue. Ironies, a dish better served stolen. Stars prickle the sky, your knife reshapes another decoy basket's ribs. Blisters rupture, weep, then resolve into tougher flesh. No need for candles, moonlight's enough to spot patrol boats bobbing like drunk ducks. You whistle a lullaby, the same one that calmed your daughter's night terrors. Grain shifts, in its hidden cradle a counterpoint to the Rhine's endless mutter. Sleep comes in splinters, a half-dream of latitude and longitude burned into basket rims. Let the officers study their maps. True north lives in your thumbs, in the crimp and fold of every smuggled seed. The sackcloth bundle lands with a thump, dust rising like guilty specters. 7 wax seals glisten unbroken, each bearing your son's clumsy attempt at a griffin insignia. You stuff the packet beneath reed piles, its corners digging into your thigh like a reproachful child. Prussian feldpost riders changed horses every 9 miles, their leather satchels fat with conscripts' pleas. This one smells of gunpowder and someone else's sweat. Twine hisses through your calluses, weaving handles for cabbage sellers' baskets. The letters shift underfoot, a nest of adders you refuse to prod. 5 winters since he marched east, each moon cycle marked by crackling parchment. Historians still argue whether Prussian officers steamed open soldiers' letters to suppress desertion, or just enjoyed the gossip. You snap a reed, its frayed end pricking the same finger he once suckled. Darkness brings bargemen's lanterns, swaying Morse code across the Rhine's black hide. A corporal pauses by your fire, eyeing the sackcloth. Posts come through Oldenburg Way, he says, too casual. You offer him elderberry wine in a chipped cup, distraction disguised as charity. He drinks slow, letting the silence fester. French infantry once used lice glue to seal love letters, crushed parasites making paste. The seal on your 4th letter glints amber, suspiciously smooth. No need for scribbles here. You murmur, palms spread to show inkless creases. He leaves muttering a B-O-U-T, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. The river laughs in wet huffs. Midnight finds you tracing the top letter's edge, a habit ruinous as picking scabs. Wax cracks under thumbnail, not enough to breach. 18 months back, you read the phrase carbuncle broth and haven't risked it since. Morning reveals 3 new blisters your hands, punishing the unspoken. A fishwife buys 2 baskets. Her palms bleed hours later from handle bite. Guilt tastes like river silt. You bury the coins near the goat's jawbone, penance for cursed craftsmanship. Rain unglues the 7th seal, ink bleeds through in Rorschach blooms. The first 3 words float up, Mother, I've wed. You rebind it with nettle twine, knots tight enough to strangle futures. Franco-Prussian wedding rites required thrice-starved witnesses, their empty bellies proof against lies. What hunger validated his vows? You'll never ask. Camp followers hawk vellum at the crossroads, their prices rising with Bonaparte's casualties. Your reed knife carves reply not replies into birch bark, each curl tossed into the Rhine. Let the fishes decipher your excuses. Bavarian archivists found a 17th century love note rolled inside a cannonball, passion, surviving Grapeshot's kiss. Your son's parchments will outlive you in mildewed anonymity. A lieutenant's mistress commissions a cradle her coin, purse heavy with battlefield plunder. You weave the letters between willow struts, their secrets caulking the gaps. 14 layers conceal carbuncle broth beneath lullaby patterns. The infant will teeth on unspoken confessions, gums gnawing truths to pap. Frost etches the riverbank, your breath mingles with the feldpost courier's exhausted mare. The newest letter bears a smudged postmark, Vienna, Dresden, geography's a young man's game. You slip it into a duck's nest, let mallards shred it for downy insulation. Spring thaws reveal a mush of syllables in the reeds, your name liquefied into stray syllables. Catfish gorge on ink-blurred regrets. By high summer, the sackcloth disintegrates, fibers joining your baskets. Weft, prisoners in Württemberg jails, wove contraband maps into their straw mattresses, freedom, hovering 6 inches beneath their dreams. You gift the final handle-blistering basket to the deaf cooper, its grip patterned with unreadable vows. He nods thanks, fingers too numb to feel the venom. Twilight steals the river's voice. Your son's words mutate into night heron's croaks. The stars align as they did at his birth, pitiless in their pinprick constancy. Fireflies blink above the drowned baskets, their light green as the ink he used. You count them instead of syllables. The Rhine exhales, one less secret to carry to the sea. Your fingertips brush the Rhine's skin cold and puckered as your own. 8 decades have calloused you both, waters carving deltas, where veins once mapped ambition. Bargemen's bells clank downstream, a relic from when Emperor Barbarossa ordered river pilots to sound brass every furlong. Your knife splits reeds into silver hairs, each strand trembling like the day's first light. Twilight stains your baskets amber, older now than the Bismarck oak they shade. You plait slower, stitches spacing like a failing heartbeat. Mud seeps into your shawl's loose weave, its weight familiar as the goat's jawbone still dangling from your rafters. Rhine eels once slithered through Roman latrine pipes to spawn modern ones still nose your toes like inquisitive phantoms. Your latest basket gapes, a lopsided vessel for minnows or melancholy. A passing coal barge coughs soot, deckhands waving with hands untouched by rush thorns. You nod back, a half-second too late. Time pools in your joints, molasses trapping August flies. Historians still argue whether medieval merchants coded basket weaves to smuggle Baltic gemstones, or just enjoyed pretty patterns. Your thumbs trace a diamond twist taught by your great aunt, dead 13 reigns ago. Night fishermen mutter about a ghost coracle near Bingen, its outline matching your first botched craft. You smirk, spitting into the current that stole it 50 summers past. Moonlight glazes your shoulders, the cold kiss of a widow's dowry plate. 3 boys toss pebbles at your fire's edge, daring each other to touch the crone's cursed wares. Their mothers will barter walnuts tomorrow for cradle baskets, ignorant of youth's circle. Dawn finds you binding splits with willow bark, tongue probing the latest tooth gap. A heron spears a fish mid-gulp. Your empty belly clenches in sympathy. French hydrologists once charted the Rhine's turn toward Utrecht to a brewer's drunken bet. You've seen drunker turns. Rain blurs the far bank, a watercolor of regrets. Your last good eye traces the horizon, stitching cloud to river to reed. The current flexes, a muscle remembering old strength. You sink your shriveled heels into silt, ankles kissing the nymph's fist that tried drowning you at 16. A chickadee alights on your knee, its weightless trust more startling than the artillery scars. You hum until it flees, the lullaby, now mostly wheeze. Midday brings a Franciscan with wine and wax tablets, charity from a man who pities your pagan fingers. The wine burns like Franzbrenween, your brother's favorite, before the fever took him. You trade the wine for nettle salve, its green stink masking the monk's disappointment. Sunset bleeds through your basket's gaps, crimson threads dissolving into night. The Rhine rasps your name, or maybe it's just a barge scraping gravel. Your final stitch mirrors the moon's curve, a cradle for shadows. Stars prick the sky needles without thread. Cold numbs your left pinky, frost claiming digits methodically since autumn. You press the dead finger to your throat, pulse thready but insistent. Bargemen's songs drift as they've drifted for 80 floods, lyrics warping like greenwood over flames. Your hands rest palms up in the shallows. The Rhine threads through them, a lover retrieving borrowed thread. A minnow nibbles your wrist, tickling the scar from the cooper's splintered stave. You laugh, a sound like wind through cracked reeds. Night herons mimic it upstream, mockery or kinship. The water holds you now, not as mother or thief, but as co-conspirator. Your last basket floats, half submerged its gaps, swallowing starlight. The current hums an old willow-cutting chant. You hum back. 80 winters dissolve into the weave, each imperfection, a bridge to the next dawnless drift. The basket drifts, slow turning its gaps, catching minnows of moonlight. Rhine mud sucks at your ankles, roots rewriting their grip with each retreating ripple. A chill climbs your shins, sharper than winters before floodgates tamed the river's tantrums. You recognize the tug, same sly current that drowned Roman dike builders in their own mortar. Your heel grinds a shard of spareware pottery, glaze faded to the color of drowned lips. Sand shifts beneath you, bones of a fisherman's daughter wedged there since the plague years. Historians still argue whether medieval basket patterns encoded last rites or just bled through tired fingers. Your final weave mimics Charlemagne's crown latticework, seen once at Aachen before they locked saints' bones behind glass. The river's breath froths over your wrists, claiming skin flakes to join its silt scriptures. A pike flashes silver, its scarred flank mirroring the welt on your thigh from 39's conscription whip. You whisper to it in Franconian dialect, the forbidden tongue your father spat into hearth ashes. Buoyant reeds brush your elbows, ancestors' fingertips urging you deeper. They say Napoleon's engineers dumped 97 church bells here after burning mines. Your ears strain for their sunken peals. Moonlight bleaches your basket's rim, the one imperfection spiraling like a dormant hurricane. You press a willow token between its ribs, the same bend your first love carved before ice choked his lungs. Cold gnaws your hips now, a luxury for those who still fear oblivion. A water snake curls around your thumb, briefly mistaking stillness for kinship. Your shawl floats free, wool unraveling into eel grass tendrils. The Rhine hums a viscous hymn, half slurred by the 3 taverns buried under its western bend. Archaeologists will someday call this a ritual deposit, never guessing your blistered laugh at the phrase. Your last breath sticks, like the time you inhaled hearth smoke, defending stolen apples. Darkness blooms warmer than expected, a smuggler's lamp swallowed by estuary fog. The basket tips, swallowing a star, as your clenched toes finally uncurl. Currents stitch your shadow to the riverbed, 8 decades dissolved in the space between heartbeats. Herons will breakfast on the gudgeon trailing your hair, their indifference the truest epitaph. The basket floats, gentle now, its cracks cradling flecks of moonglow. Rhine silt hugs your feet, a lover's cling loosening with each breath of water. Coolness laps your calves, a memory of winters softened by time's patient hand. That same tug swirls near the sly whisper that lulled old builders to rest. Your heel brushes pottery shards, their once bright glaze worn to the hue of river mist. Sand murmurs beneath you, stirred by stories of hands that wove through plague and prayer. Scholars muse whether patterns in reeds held secrets or simply mirrored weary hearts. Your last weave curves, echoing sacred lattice from a king's forgotten crown. River foam kisses your wrists, carrying fragments of skin to join silt's endless tale. A fish glides past, its scales mirroring old scars healed beneath wool and years. You hum a tune your mother sang, ashes now, but the water remembers. Reeds sway against your arms, ghost touch guiding you toward deeper quiet. They say drowned bells sleep here, 97 voices, hushed by flood and fire. Your eyelids soften listening. Moon-pale light smooths the basket's edge, its lone flaw spiraling like a forgotten storm. You tuck a willow curl between the ribs, the shape your child self once traced in frost. Cold wraps your bones, an old friend to those who have outrun shadows. A serpent brushes your palm, brief warmth, then melts into the dark. Your shawl drifts onward, wool unraveling into waterweed ribbons. The Rhine hums low, a lullaby blurred by time's slow bend. Future minds may name this ritual, never tasting the sweet ache in your smile. Breath eases, a tender release, like smoke curling upward from long-stilled embers. Darkness cradles you, a lantern's glow swallowed by fog's embrace. The basket tilts, star-dappled, as your feet soften into the flow. Currents weave your essence through riverbed stones years, unwinding like frayed thread. Dawn herons will glide overhead, their wings writing clean endings in empty sky. Rest now, the water whispers rest.